Welcome back. Today we're going to take a quick look at the KBEAR Stellar earbud. I'm going to call this a quick look because I don't necessarily feel qualified to do a full review of an earbud when it's my first earbud, but we'll do a quick look and I will give you my observations on what I hear and we'll kind of go from there. So this one was sent out by Keep Hi-Fi and the Wheezy store, so thank you guys for exposing us IEM guys to things like this, and definitely one of those things to keep in mind for 1111. You know, I'll be looking for a KBEAR Lark maybe if we're cross our fingers and get really lucky, and so you might see this KBEAR Stellar. It's about $369 today on Wheezy, which is pretty reasonable to throw in as a filler if you're making an order anyway. So thank you guys for shipping that one out to me. So here's some quick observations. So I plugged this into my phone like I kind of normally do. This is a G8. It actually does have the quad hi-fi DAC. So kind of a nice phone. These guys will use definitely a little harder to power than your typical IEM. Definitely play with the volume and get it quite up there before you can hear everything in a reasonable manner. At lower volumes, because of the treble roll-off, it's very quiet, so definitely keep notching up your volume until you hear something reasonable. But, you know, on first listen, it's very pleasing. It's got this warm, bassy, musical sound, which is very nice. Can't really complain there. The vocals definitely come through right in the middle. I mean, I would almost call it mid-centric, except that the bass doesn't roll off. It's not like a tabletop. It's kind of like more of like a ramp where the bass and the vocals are kind of straight across, and then the treble kind of rolls off quite a bit. But it almost feels mid-centric because that's what really hits you first are the vocals, and then kind of right behind the vocals are the bass. So you know, it's kind of hard to argue with that kind of sound signature. It's just very pleasing, and at $3, it does kind of what it needs to do. So on the other hand, I said it's the treble rolls off quite early, and it comes off as a bit dark. It definitely needs a treble boost. Most of the higher end frequencies are not quite lost. I mean, depending on your volume, they're kind of lost, but certain instruments, certain really high frequency sounds, the level is just not quite there to have it not come off as dark. And something even like acoustic guitars, where you're kind of expecting to hear that string pluck, it's kind of muted a bit, and then you get this the low end of the acoustic guitar kind of dominates that sound, and it comes off as a bit maybe too heavy, too thick. But, you know, with a 15.4 millimeter dynamic driver, I wasn't sure what I was actually expecting. I expected it to be a little more bassy, but with the vocals as forward as they are, it actually comes out, you know, musical and sort of balanced between the two. But when you get over into the high end, it kind of goes off kilter a bit. But yeah, you know, from an IEM perspective, I am kind of used to maybe a 10 millimeter driver. So I was kind of expecting a more powerful bass, but it's actually quite controlled and definitely doesn't really kill the vocals, which was kind of nice. But I definitely would say it works better on those bassy pop songs, even EDM. Things that have kind of a high frequency at a higher level, like EDM, kind of comes through without a problem. Some of the more gentle high frequency sound cymbals and maybe even snaps, definitely not at the level where you could really hear them easily. You're kind of searching for them. But so when you look kind of behind the musicality, behind this warm, pleasant sound, the details are a little harder to find, at least for me, coming from, you know, an IEM type background, and the driver feels a bit slow. When you kind of look beneath that warm sound, do you hear a lot of the cues, a lot of the kind of the micro details that you expect to hear? You know, probably not. I mean, I think I would stay at that musicality level and just enjoy it and not go, you know, scurrying around trying to find someone's breath or, you know, someone, putting their hand in their pocket, it's probably not going to be there. And I'm not sure if that's a driver thing. It's just not quite fast enough, or that's just the style of earbud. Yeah, I would say it doesn't really matter. I mean, especially at that musicality level where you're just enjoying the music, I wouldn't dive down into there too much. So Soundstage, it can be wide, and there's definitely songs where it comes off as quite wide, and it's kind of surprising because you think of an IEM, we spent so much time getting this thing like plugged into our ears with a perfect fit, and then you take something like this, this big round disc, and slide it in your ear, and you kind of get a very similar soundstage. It's maybe just a little bit more forward than an IEM sometimes, but as far as the width, it's actually quite nice. The problem on this particular one is some tracks end up quite layered right in the center. So sometimes you just hear it go wide, but most of the tracks, most of the music ends up being right behind the vocals. And then you combine that with this little bit of a darkness where you don't have any treble, you don't have any high frequencies breaking up that sound. You just have kind of a low frequency over low frequency. You end up with kind of a muddy, congested sound behind the vocals, of course. The vocals sound good, but everything behind it a little lost. And so I do wish it was kind of better use of space, because it can do it because you hear it occasionally, but when you look at the bulk of tracks, they ended up kind of being all layered on top of each other with not really enough separation to really look. And again, it's kind of like the details, don't go looking for all this instrument separation because it's not really going to be there on this guy. And so lastly, I'll say I like it on EDM, but especially on the EDM that goes a little higher, Avicii, even a little bit of Kygo. When you push some of those high frequency sounds hard, you'll get an occasional distortion, which I was kind of surprised. It's like a 15.4 millimeter driver. I wasn't actually expecting all that too much, but between pushing the volume up quite high, the songs are kind of pushing it, so I'm not sure that's all that outrageous to think about getting a little distortion there, but it happened. I noticed it, so I thought I would mention it. So that's about it. I think I just wanted to do a quick run through. I'll probably look for something like a Yin Crow on 1111, something maybe a step higher. This is about $3. Yin Crow is about $10. And the only thing I know about the Yin Crow is it wasn't mentioned in a Verge article a long time ago, so that's kind of the name kind of stuck in my head. But I think it's a popular earbud style. But it's my first earbud. Quite surprised. Definitely didn't think I would get a soundstage that actually sounded right without getting the fit right, without getting the pads with a little circle in them, holes on both sides. But at the end of the day, I kind of felt like I kind of fell into IEM mode, and I wanted to change the tips, change the cable, start EQing a bunch of stuff. And, at some point you're just like, well, it's $3. I'll probably pick up, a $5 or a $10 one and not really spend hours trying to get this one right. So again, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time.